Most men watch porn, some more than others, but is this really a problem? Dr. Flood, an expert on porn and its effects on Australian youth, believes porn is distorting views on sex.
Porn shows men behaving in rough and violent and coercive ways to women, forcing penises down their throats, throwing them around a bed, sort of pushing and slapping and calling them horrible names like slut and bitch and so on. And I think some young men are learning from that that's what sex is. That's what sex looks like. That's how you should treat your female partners.
He explains that porn has become more violent and aggressive over time.
Over the last decade or so, the proportion of scenes in pornography that show slapping or choking or aggressive fellatio or kind of verbally abusive language have gone up, so that now aggression is routine in commercial mainstream pornography.
So maybe sex education at school should include information about the reality of pornography and sex, rather than focusing on the equation of a man plus a woman equals a baby.
We still have a society where sexuality education among children and young people is pretty poor. It's still birds and the bees, how babies are made and so on. And young people in schools don't get much sense at all of how sexuality is about lust, about love, about desire, about pleasure and so on. The messages we give to young people about sex are still about safety, about fear, about pregnancy and contraception and so on. And we don't really do much else. And it's not surprising in that context that some young people turn to porn as a source of information about how to have sex or what's good about sex.
Tim Wallace is the head of PDHPE at Shaw School in North Sydney and sees a need for more education on porn in the classroom.
Look, it's not specifically part of the curriculum. I mean, it's not written into any syllabuses and so on. But certainly, it is something that some staff would touch on when they're talking about, relationships and obviously adolescent male issues. So I think it's really important. I mean, we look at relationships and we look at respect and that type of thing. And I think that's probably an area where we can incorporate some education around this. And also that pornography often gives young men the idea that the sort of things they see when they're watching porn is something that all girls are going to be interested in, and that it gives them the right to behave in that way.
Although porn films are often unrealistic and porn stars are highly paid actors, many young men are using porn as sex education and copying what they see online.
It encourages especially teenage boys or young men to target or want to do those things just to check it off, or just brag about it to their friends just because it's been in porn and stuff. And I don't think that's the right message that it should be sending at all.
Dr. Flood agrees, but some young men may wrongly confuse porn with reality and expect an aggressive and violent exchange between the sheets.
The worst thing about porn for me is not that some young guy is going to spend 3 hours a night masturbating. I think that's fine. Calluses, sleeplessness, that's okay. The worst thing about porn for me is that some young men are going to pressure or coerce women into sex because of the ways in which porn has shaped their sexuality.
Watching too much porn may lead to an inability to be turned on by normal men and women, which can lead to problems getting it up when it really counts.
There's a lot more erectile dysfunction. People are basically having trouble getting an erection with a person because porn provides such a high intensity sense of stimulation that the brain almost, from a neuroplasticity point of view, the brain actually gets wired to expect that level of stimulation in order to produce an erection. And so when someone then actually gets together with a human being who's just ordinary, who's not all glossy and doesn't fit, that kind of classic model look, then there's not enough stimulation for that person and they can often struggle. And that leads to all sorts of issues around shame, insecurities, etc. If you feel like you have an issue with porn, then firstly, you're not the only one. There are a lot of people out there. Try and reach out. You'd be surprised how many of your friends probably are in a similar situation. Reach out to find someone you can talk to.
Porn is something that's here to stay. If we want to curb the increased aggression and violence it promotes, or the unrealistic expectations it generates, then we need to stop pretending it's not happening and start talking. Ali Selby for Between the Sheets.